Back at the bus, back at it again with another episode, a special episode with a very special guest, none other than E-Man from E-Man's Movie Reviews. How's it going, E-Man?
Oh man, just taking it day by day, but doing good, man. How are y'all?
Doing
Can't
good.
complain. Can't complain.
Welcome back, man. Welcome back. It's been a minute.
I was gonna say we spoke with you almost a year now.
Yeah. Yep.
So, obviously we kind of discussed the recast Tchalla movement that you have spearheaded. It's been a year, so, is there anything within that year that, specifically you feel like the movement has done and how you feel about the movement?
I mean, look, like, and it's hard to quantify because we've done so much in that amount of time. I mean, golly, I don't even remember like what number we were at with the petition. But I mean, now we're a couple hundred away from 60,000. I would say that we have a mood shift happening from a year ago, where now all of a sudden people are kind of like, oh, maybe this isn't such a terrible idea. Maybe it's not so disrespectful. I mean, we got Chadwick's brother, Derek Boseman, to come out. And he said that not only did he support recasting Tchalla, but he thought that Chadwick would also believe to go ahead and recast the role as well. So, there goes that myth, that the family wouldn't support it. More recently, we had the Insecure actor. He's not insecure, but
from Insecure, right? Yeah.
Yolanda Noel, he came out and he was like, I hit him up. I was like, yo, would you be down to play Tchalla? And he was like, in a blink of an eye. So that was cool. That was another myth buster, that, no other actor would want all that pressure or whatever, because that's nonsense. And then we got more celebrities, more social media influencers. People are kind of like really starting to see, especially when you compare it to white popular characters. We just got a movie with 3 Spider-Man in it. We were about to get another movie with multiple Batman in it, in the Flash. Like, but we can't recast the one leading black character in the MCU. Like, come on now. I understand Marvel had their hearts in the right place. They trying to honor them, but I'm just saying, if you look at the bigger picture, recasting is actually a much better option because it preserves the legacy. It keeps Chadwick's name constantly relevant. It creates an opportunity for more black actors. You get that strong male black presence on screen, and the thing is, if you really go down the checklist of all the objections people have, none of them really refute recasting Tchalla. In other words, there's no real reason to get rid of Tchalla, whereas you can still talk about other black heroes. You can still pass the mantle if you want to. You could do literally whatever you want and not have to get rid of Tchalla. Like, it's not necessary. So that was one of the main goals, and I think more and more people are starting to see that, actually, we don't have to get rid of this character. People are coming around to variants more now. So like, now that they got Loki, now that they saw the Doctor Strange 2 trailer, and you seeing multiple Doctor Stranges, you seeing all these characters coming around, multiple Wandas. Now it's not so crazy to keep Tchalla going at all. So I'm just happy with the mood shift. I still think that one way or another, I think Marvel's going to have a variant Tchalla. My concern is that they think he's replaceable. My concern is that they think he could just be substituted with any old black character, and be like, oh, it's just about the mantle, right? Yeah, here goes some black character in the mantle, Shuri, M'Baku, whoever. Y'all should be happy, right? No, man, because we wouldn't do that with Bruce Wayne. We wouldn't do that with James Bond. You ain't gonna give us like any old Spider-Man. You're gonna give us Peter Parker. They couldn't even give us Miles Morales by himself. They couldn't even do that. They had to give you Miles Morales and Peter Parker tag team. Why? Because they know where the money resides with him. So yeah, I want that same energy with Tchalla. And the other battle, which might be a little tougher because I feel like Marvel really has their mindset on this, is the idea of like killing them off. I don't think that I think we have conveyed the message that T'Challa needs to continue, but I don't think people have understood why it's problematic to kill T'Challa again. That's the part that, that's the next part of my mission in the next couple of months, is to try and communicate that to people, to realize like, hey, look, we can celebrate Chadwick, we can honor him, whatever he did, but y'all don't realize the complexities of like killing this character and saying that that's a tribute.
That leads me to my first question. So one of the things that I have noticed from you in particular, with you kind of going to channels that don't come into it necessarily pro recast, right? So quote unquote behind enemy lines. There's a lot of things that we see from our perspective, from our shared perspective, that are easily dismissible, that we've heard over and over and over again, and you kind of get to a point where you have to balance your critical thinking and your logic with staying open-minded to other people's perspective. How difficult is that to balance, especially with somebody who's coming into the situation on the total opposite end of the spectrum?
Yeah. I mean, I think the difficulty has kind of been minimized from the very jump of the creation of the petition. So for example, every movement has like, extremes, and there are more radical sides to it. And Recast T'Challa is no different, right? So for example, a lot of people are like, hey, brother, you going way too soft. We don't need no variant. They just need a straight up recast, and they don't, they got to do this, and that's fine. Like, I'm not opposed to that. But what I did was I set the bar so low on purpose to get the most amount of people on board. In a perfect world, we would just do a roadie situation. You know what I'm saying? Just get somebody else, play the role. Marvel could say some kind words. They can play that nice tribute video, just like they did with Stan Lee. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can tribute stuff without discontinuing the story. And, for me, I'm just kind of like, that would be ideal. That'd be perfect. But I also understand that this is a sensitive situation. So one thing that, informed me in this was, I was told that the people at Marvel, like in the offices, from the interns to the execs, when they heard about Chadwick passing away, they were in tears. Like, the whole office shut down. Like, it was just a mood shift. And, of course, as we know from Nate Moore and all them, they made their decision within minutes not to recast and all that. So to me, I had to approach this situation like, this is going to be a delicate situation because emotions are involved, and when emotions are involved, you can't just hit them with straight logic, like that. I don't know if y'all have been in relationships. I've been married for a couple years. Man,
everything you just said sounded like it came out of a session.
Right.
So I understand.
Right. Like, you can't attack an emotional situation with straight up logic. But what you can do is have an emotionally response that's backed with logic. So to me, I was like, you know what? I'm not going to fight this sensitively sad reaction with straight up facts. I'm going to respond to it with love, with respect, and facts. Right. So by doing that, nobody argues against positivity. Right. Like, they'll argue if you come in abrasive, aggressive, insulting, mad, because then people get defensive. But if you come into it as like, yo, I'm a fan too. I'm hurting just like you. I want the same thing you want, but here's an alternative. Let's actually recast. So for me, it wasn't as difficult to go behind enemy lines or to talk to people that haven't thought all this through, because I'm like, hey, look, I'm not attacking you. We're not anti-Marvel. I want the best of Marvel. Matter of fact, I want the best of all superhero stuff, because I'm just a fan like that. But when it comes to Marvel, I want it to succeed too. I definitely want the major Black property to succeed. I mean,
nobody wants Black Panther to fail, man. Nobody.
Exactly.
Wants that.
Like, I put my money where my mouth is. I bought out a theater so that kids could go watch this movie. I believe in this. This ain't just for, a fan wanting to get their movie and they comic book stories. No, man, like this is more than that. So for me, it was always like, if I approach it from a positive, emotional angle back with facts, it makes it harder to argue against. And if you notice, like, I would say out of 95%, except for like maybe the For All Nerds podcast, 95% of all my conversations have been positive, and they flipped a lot of people because they started to come around and be like, oh, wow, all these preconceived notions I had, they don't really hold water.
For All Nerds, was that the one with the brother who went to Howard with Chadwick?
Yeah.
That was a hard one to get through, man. That was a hard one to get through.
I think he wanted a rematch. And I was like, I don't think you want that smoke right now. I don't think, like...
Boy, them comments, boy. Oh, my God. I was like, well, maybe I'm crazy. Let me see what everybody else thinking. No,
I mean, look, and the thing is, I got much respect for him, because, again, it's an emotional situation. They knew Chadwick. They talked to him, So for me, I was just kind of like, everything you say that you want, though, doesn't mean we should get rid of the character T'Challa, because the other thing is, and some people don't understand the difference with this. If you're a comic book head, that's not the same thing as a moviegoer. Moviegoers and comic book heads are two different things. You approach the stories, they might be the same stories, but you approach them differently. If you're a comic book head, you've had decades worth of stories and initiation into a story where to you don't care if they mix it up because you got 30, 40 years worth of stories in your mind. For a moviegoer, you might only have one or two. That might be the one or two times that they've even seen Black Panther. Whereas if you're a comic book fan, you've seen Hundlin, Priest, Stan Lee and Kirby. You might have seen all of that. So for you, it's easy to change it up and be like, yeah, just get another Panther in there. Yeah, there's more than just T'Challa. But for the audience, they only got one movie with him in a couple minutes. In other films, that's not enough time. They consume it differently and the perspectives are different. And that's why I'm like, yo, it is important to recast T'Challa to continue that portrayal, because you don't get that stage. The globe does not read comics. They all watch movies across all countries. It's a whole different platform. So it's different stakes, it's different perspectives and different outcomes.
So, you had just mentioned that, when Marvel found out about the passing of Chadwick Boseman, it was heartbreaking for everybody in the office. Yeah. Meanwhile, we get things like Nate Moore, which happened, in between since the last time we spoke with you. What are your thoughts just on his comments specifically about how, like you said, it took minutes to come up with the decision to basically not recast T'Challa?
Yeah, I think that and I have much respect for Nate Moore, just because if it wasn't for Nate Moore, we wouldn't have Black Panther on screen in the first place. Like, he is like one of the only Black higher execs in Marvel, so and the way Marvel works, like Kevin Feige, he obviously the buck stops with him, but he also empowers other people to be like, hey, you want this project, you got it, so I don't take anything away from what they gave us, because we wouldn't even be here if it wasn't for them. At the same time, I do have a bit of a disagreement in terms of his perspective on the Black Panther franchise as a whole. So for example, like I think it was like in 2018, he did an interview with Rant, and he was just kind of like, his perspective was more on like, oh well, there's more to Wakanda. There's more emphasis on the mantle, and in so many words, he could see the Black Panther franchise being bigger than T'Challa himself. Mm-hmm. And for me, I was kind of like, that's not what the 55 years worth of comics have been built on. That's like imagining, what, Gotham is way bigger than Batman, and anybody can be Batman. No, it's not. Like, we've seen that not work out so well with the Gotham TV series, which, by the way, still had Bruce Wayne in it. Still had it in him.
They find a way to shoehorn Batman, Bruce Wayne in every DC project.
Even in the Joker movie.
Yes.
Even in the Joker movie that was about the Joker, they still had to have a Bruce Wayne in there. Mm-hmm. So my point is like, I would have a fundamental difference of opinion with him, because that's, again, it's like saying like, yo, Asgard is more important than Thor. No, it ain't.
No, it
Ain't
ain't.
nobody checking for nothing in Asgard. Don't nobody care about nothing in Asgard except for Thor and maybe Loki. You know what I'm saying? But what does that tell you? It's the characters that we care about, not the world building, not the titles or mantles that they hold. These characters define those mantles. All that other stuff is background. I'm not going to a blockbuster. Well, I will go to anything Black, but if it was like an Asgard movie with no Thor, I'm not going to that. I don't care about that. Put that on Disney Plus. You know, so for me, that's the one thing where I'm like, with Nate Moore, I'm like, look, don't lose your perspective, because if you want to do all that on Disney Plus, that's perfect. Because Disney Plus, the purpose of those shows is to give you background information, build up supporting characters, and to do world building. That's what they do best. That's what we got in WandaVision and Loki, you know, and Falcon and Winter Soldier. All of those shows, they amplified these characters that were supporting. In other words, couldn't have a leading movie most of the time, and they expanded the MCU. That's not what we need in blockbuster movies. Blockbuster movies we go to for the characters. We didn't go watch the Terminator to watch the future world. We went to go see Arnold. You know what I'm saying? You didn't go watch Die Hard to go see what's going on in New York City. No, you went to go see, you know, Bruce Willis go kick some Russian butt. So that's my thing. Movies are usually successful when the characters are highlighted. Again, and I've said this before, this is why we ain't never had a 007 movie. We've only had James Bond movies, because we are attracted to the characters. You ain't never seen no movie about boxing, just in general. You did see a whole bunch of Rocky movies. So this is what I'm saying. I'm like, yo, again, if y'all want to explore Wakanda, I'm down with everything and anything Black, but you have to put those in the right mediums. And T'Challa is the central medium. He is the one that basically had the same potential to be as big as Tony Stark, Captain America, etc. He's the one that has the most heritage and cachet in the comics. I mean, the cartoons, video games, everything puts respect on T'Challa's name, because he is that one, the character that was literally created to be the embodiment of Black representation. And the problem here is the fact that you don't want him to become expendable. You don't want to say it's just about the mantle, because if that's the case, everybody is basically on the hook to be replaced. You don't like Letitia Wright? Get rid of her. Throw some other Black actor in there. M'Baku's running out of popularity? Get rid of him. Put somebody else on. That. Come on now. We don't need a revolving door, because when you do that, people stop caring about the characters. They just say put whoever, and it's not going to be that lasting. That's not how successful movies work.
So even with that, right? We understand that. You understand that. It seems to be very clear that that was the vision of the IP all the way up, and even through the film, right? We had our issues with the film, but I don't think anyone came out of Black Panther 1 with the idea that it was about Wakanda more than the character of T'Challa. I don't even think that's what Ryan Coogler went into creating the first Black Panther film thinking. We heard him talk about similarities between T'Challa and wanting to liken that to that of James Bond, right? That's why it's such an apt comparison. So how did we get from that to it's more than a mantle, right? And that's where I start to, I won't say break off, because I just like you said, Black Panther would not have been on screen if not for Nate Moore and Ryan Coogler. So that is the difference, the level that you have to give to them. You can never take that away from them. It's just, I struggle with understanding intentions or trying to cope with intentions when something is so plain and obvious, and then there's this stark change to another direction. It doesn't feel right, and it almost feels as if we don't turn some of that criticism to Ryan and Nate, which you've done. It feels like if we don't turn some of that criticism to them, it's almost like it could be for naught, because we could have a brand new creator in there doing another Black Panther film the same way if we don't ever speak up and say these things, right? So this is important.
I trust Ryan Coogler in terms of his creativity, but at the same time, I don't give him blind faith. And I think a lot of people have made that mistake because they have been so enamored with the success and the unprecedented achievements that Marvel Studios has made that they basically are like, whatever, here's my money, there you go. Yeah. And it was funny because I was on another podcast one time and they were calling me a Marvel expert. And I was like, damn, I ain't know about, I was all that. But they were like, no, you're a Marvel expert because even though you are such a fan of Marvel, you're not afraid to criticize them either. And I was like, well, yeah, because, you know, like if everything Marvel does is just gold to you, then my question is like, well, do you really love Marvel? You know, because like for me, if I see Marvel misstepping in any way, I need to correct that because I want them to be better. You know what I'm saying? Like it's no different than with my kids. I'm like, yo, I'm gonna criticize you in love because I want you to be better than what you are, you know, or what you think you are, you know.
So many people don't understand that.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just saying, so many people don't understand that these days. It seems like they just feel like they got to go with whatever.
Criticism doesn't always have to be just for criticism's sake, you know. Sometimes it's for you to better yourself, as you said.
Yeah. Like it's not just because you get criticized, it doesn't equate to being hateful. You know, it's not hating, you know, and I think people kind of default to that. And I'm like, no, like I just posted my reaction to Moon Knight, you know, because I just saw the first couple episodes or whatever. And I thought it was incredible. I thought it was really good. And I just had somebody comment and be like, man, you always say everything's amazing on Marvel. I'm like, no, I don't. I was like, have you seen what I said about Hawkeye? Like, I wasn't all that blown away by Ms. Marvel either. Like, those things were kind of shaky, you know. So, you know, but it's one of those things where like we do have to get in a position where even if we enjoy someone's content, even if we are fans of them, we have to be able to give them a little bit of pushback, you know, again, to make them better because we're all human. Ain't nobody perfect. Marvel themselves have made mistakes. They've admitted to their mistakes. They've said how much they screwed up in the past, and they've grown from that. They messed up with Tilda Swinton, you know, casting her as Celtic instead of Tibetan or whatever. They've admitted that. Feige talked about how he messed up because they were going to put Doctor Strange at the end of WandaVision, but he didn't want a man telling a woman how to do magic or whatever. Like, they're not perfect. They're not perfect, and that's okay. That's okay. They can still be great and not perfect. So, yeah, we got to give them that pushback.
So, I'm not going to beat your head in with all recast stuff. I do have some MCU rumor mill stuff I wanted to run past you. The first one will be Black Panther related, though. So, there is a rumor circulating about a early 15th or a late 15th, early 16th century scene in Black Panther Wakanda Forever. And that sounds like slavery to me. And for a title that was created to be totally antithetical to that of stereotypical African American tropes, while I realize that there is a degree of difference between, you know, the African American experience and that of what's represented by Wakanda, is slavery the way to close that gap? Is that the way we want to connect back to our brothers and sisters in the States?
Absolutely not.
I mean, okay. I haven't heard too much about I'm aware of the rumor, but I haven't heard anything else substantial behind it. But hypothetically, if they go that route, I mean, I need people to realize that, like, you know, Ryan Coogler still is African American, and you have to think about like African Americans. I mean, for as long as we've been here, all we hear about is slavery. You know, when it comes to our history, you know what I'm saying. So it's not a surprise if something like that were included. To have some other type of commentary. I mean, you have to think about this. Look at what he did with Killmonger. You know, he modernized Killmonger, you know, who in the comics was also Wakandan, and you know, he wasn't like American or nothing like that. But he modernized it to bring in some African American perspectives.
Yeah.
So if you do go back to the 1500s, 1600s or whatever, I wouldn't be surprised if it were to bring in some sort of commentary to be like, hey, Wakanda, look at what's been going on with this Atlantic slave trade. And y'all just was like, not our problem. So I can see that being for more commentary to anything.
I think it is that. I think it's supposed to be, or from what I've seen, it's probably a tie-in a little bit with Namor and their, like, what was going on with, like, the Mayans and whatnot.
Sure. I guess my issue is that the dissonance or the disregard of what was going on in the slave trade for Africans going over to the Americas, it is not so much a direct part of Wakandan lore. It's more so of Stan Lee and Jack Kirby trying not to be stereotypical, but in that they end up creating this rift between what is true to African Americans and what they're aspiring to show in Wakandans. So it's there. It's just, I don't need to see 12 Years a Slave again.
I completely understand. I get it. I get it.
Ways.
I agree. I mean, look, like, one of the things that always drew me to the Black Panther mythos and the comics was the fact that it was always trying to be more than what we knew. You know, it was always trying to push things further, especially when it came to Black representation. You know, like, and it's one of the reasons why, like, I say recasting T'Challa is so important, because what he ended up doing in the comics, especially once the Dora Milaje were created, he started elevating Black women. He supported Black women. He showed that, yeah, I might be this dope superhero Black king, but I got these Black women all around me that'll whoop you. That's not something you would see in a lot of other portrayals, you know, especially with, you know, Black portrayals and stuff. So to me, it was like, the Black Panther franchise was not about perpetuating a lot of tropes that we would see, because literally T'Challa was created to break those tropes. Let's not forget, Falcon was still first, right? Falcon was around first, but he was just a sidekick. You had all these other Black characters that was shucking and jiving and, you know, doing whatever at the time and stuff. But like, they made T'Challa to be like, nah, we're above that. You know, we're no different than, you know, a Reed Richards or a Superman or whoever. I'm a king. I'm independent. I'm this, I'm that. I take care of my people. Like, Wakanda is supposed to be the role model, you know, for Blackness on the globe. Now, I'm not saying that they were perfect, because clearly they had some issues, especially with, you know, neglecting slavery and stuff like that. But at the same time, they learn from their mistakes. They do better. They act better. And I mean, I hope they don't lose sight of that in the movie. I hope,